It was supposed to be a simple flight, a quick hop across the country for a family getaway. But halfway through boarding, a flight attendant made a decision so reckless, so cruel. It turned an ordinary day into a national headline. This is the story of how one father, a calm, quiet man, ended up grounding an entire commercial flight, all because his daughter's life was put at risk. 15-year-old Maya had been dealing with severe asthma since she was little. She never went anywhere without her inhaler, her lifeline. That morning, she boarded the plane with her dad, Captain James Harris, a retired Air Force pilot. The two had planned this trip for months. Maya was all smiles, holding on to her carry-on, which contained her medicine, snacks, and a book. They settled into their seats, excited for the journey. But just minutes later, trouble arrived wearing a crisp Navy uniform. A flight attendant with a stiff smile stopped by and told Maya to place her bag in the overhead bin. Maya explained, politely, that her medicine was inside, and she needed it close by. The attendant's smile vanished. "It's a safety regulation. Overhead only." James calmly stepped in. Her inhaler is medical equipment. It stays with her. But instead of listening, the attendant reached down, snatched the bag, and shoved it into the overhead compartment. James was stunned, but not as stunned as he'd be seconds later. When the attendant came back holding Maya's inhaler, "This isn't allowed on board," she said, and tossed it into a trash bag. Maya's breathing started to quicken, not from asthma, but from panic. James felt his blood run cold. "Excuse me," he said, voice low but deadly calm. "That's my daughter's prescribed medication." "You just broke the law." The attendant shrugged. "If it's important, the airline will replace it after we land." James took a deep breath. He was on T, just a father. He was also a man who'd spent 20 years flying aircraft worth millions of dollars. He knew aviation regulations better than anyone on that plane, and he was about to use them. He unbuckled his seatbelt, walked straight to the cockpit, and requested to speak with the captain. When the co-pilot stepped out, James calmly presented his retired Air Force ID, quoted FAA medical transport laws word for word, and stated that the flight was now operating under an immediate safety violation. Then he said the words no airline captain ever wants to hear. "Under federal aviation law, this aircraft is grounded until my daughter's medical equipment is returned." Within minutes, the flight stopped taxiing. The pilot came over the intercom, voice tense. "We are experiencing a delay due to a passenger's medical issue." The flight attendant's face drained of color when the captain ordered her to retrieve the inhaler immediately, but it was too late. The damage was done. Several passengers pulled out their phones, filming the confrontation as James explained exactly why the plane couldn't legally take off. The video would later rack up millions of views online. When security arrived, the flight attendant was escorted off the plane. James sat back down, handed the inhaler to Maya, and gave her a reassuring pat on the hand. The entire cabin erupted in applause, not just for the inhaler, but because one father had stood up and refused to let arrogance or ignorance put a child's life at risk. As the plane finally took off an hour later, James glanced at his daughter and said, "You never let anyone take away what keeps you breathing, not in life, not in the air. If you believe more people need to hear stories like this, stories where the right person stands up at the right time, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to back down."